Okay, so if you've ever gone down the rabbit hole of chasing that perfect high-gain guitar tone,
Yeah.
you absolutely know the struggle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You need that huge kind of scoop saturation for leads, but then you also want that really tight mid-focus crunch for rhythm. And somehow all of that needs to fit on a pedal board that doesn't require its own roadie.
Exactly. It's this constant battle, versatility versus space.
Yeah, the eternal conflict.
It is. And usually, players end up using multiple drive pedals, specific ones for specific jobs.
Yeah.
And that just eats up board space fast, needs complicated switching. It gets expensive.
Right. So today we're going to dig deep into an analog pedal that tries to kind of bundle those needs together, the MXR M251 FOD drive. Okay, so our mission here is really to get under the hood of this thing. How does this little box actually deliver what the sources call two highly coveted amp stacks in a single housing? We want to understand how you get maximum high gain options in like the smallest possible format.
And it's a pretty recent addition to the standard MXR lineup, too. Came out around 2020, maybe a bit later. MSRP is about 180 US at 2, so pretty accessible.
And it's in that classic small MXR box, right?
Yep, standard compact chassis. Right away, that tells you, okay, space saving is a huge part of the design thinking here.
So before we even talk about mixing sounds, let's just establish the core idea. When MXR built the M251 or the FOD drive, sometimes you see it styled that way. They weren't just making another overdrive, they were putting two complete distinct overdrive personalities in there. That's the key point. And it's really important to remember, this is analog. Fully analog distortion and overdrive. We're not talking digital modeling here, no emulation.
No, it's actual components, voltage, doing the work to create the clipping. It's designed to add very specific flavors. It's way beyond just a clean, transparent boost.
Okay, so two distinct circuits inside, kind of aiming for famous amp sounds. Let's talk Voice 1, the high gain channel. Based on how it's described, what kind of amp are we thinking they're mimicking here?
Well, the description is super scooped high gain saturation. That immediately makes you think of those modern American high gain amps, right? Like maybe a Mesa style, something boutique along those lines. It's built for that really tight, heavy, compressed sound for lead-playing metal rhythms, where the mids are deliberately pulled way back.
And why is that scooped sound so important for those genres? What's the function?
It's really about how it sits in a mix. When you scoop out the mid-range, you create space, sonic space.
Right.
It lets the bass guitar frequencies and the kick drum really punch through. You end up with that tight, modern kind of grinding tone that sounds absolutely massive on its own because the aggression is all in the highs and lows.
Got it. Okay, so that's Voice 1. Voice 2, the crunch gain channel. I'm guessing that has to be the total opposite, tonally speaking?
Pretty much, yeah. It's designed to be. The crunch channel is described as having a punchy mid-range crunch. So if Voice 1 is that American high gain thing, Voice 2 is almost certainly going for a hot-rodded British sound.
Ah, the Marshall-esque thing.
Exactly. That classic sound that really pushes the upper mids so your guitar cuts through a busy band. It's perfect for aggressive rhythm, classic rock.
Yeah.
Anything where you need that harmonic richness right in the middle of the EQ.
So, okay, you've got these two really classic but very different distortion philosophies. One's about that compressed, scooped aggression. The other's about mid-forward punch and clarity. And technically, it's pretty standard stuff.
Yeah, dead simple. 9 volts DC, draws about 11 milliamps, super low current draw.
So it'll slot into pretty much any existing pedal board power setup easily.
Yep. Which, again, just reinforces that whole design idea. Get complex, powerful tones, but make them practical and easy to use.
Okay, let's unpack this part. Because having two sounds is cool, but the real clever bit, it seems, is how MXR lets you actually use both. And that brings us straight to the blend knob. That feels like the M251's big innovation.
Precisely, yeah. The blend knob is where this pedal really earns its keep. Most drive pedals, they either stack circuits, so one drives into the next, or maybe they just give you an A-B switch.
Right, simple switching.
But the M251's blend control, it lets you smoothly, continuously mix between the high gain channel and the crunch gain channel in parallel, like having two amps running at the same time and using a mixer.
Okay, wait. If I'm blending a super scoop channel, which has less mids, with a really mid-heavy channel, isn't there a danger of just creating, mud or a weird, phasey, low-end mess? Why doesn't that just turn into sonic mush?
That's a really good question, actually. And it probably comes down to the analog circuit design itself, because they're two very specific, probably quite carefully voiced drive circuits. They likely manage their low end before they hit that blend stage.
Oh, okay.
So the parallel mix ends up feeling more organic, less like just stacking two random EQs on top of each other. You're essentially dialing in this third kind of hybrid tone that lives somewhere on the spectrum between those two core sounds.
And the practical flexibility there seems huge. Like, say your main sound is that mid-punchy rhythm. But for a lead break, you need to keep some of that mid-strength, but add the tightness and compression of the high-gain voice. You don't need another pedal. You just nudge that blend knob a bit towards the scooped side. Adds aggression, but you don't lose your core mid-focus. It's like real-time tone morphing.
Totally. And that hybrid ability, it solves the common problem players have where the rhythm tone sounds huge, but then their lead tone just vanishes in the band mix.
Yeah, it gets lost.
The M251 gives you that tool to inject the cut or the tightness you need without totally ditching the character you started with. And then, okay, this is where the tone shaping gets really interesting for me. The three-way scoop switch. This isn't just your standard tone knob, is it? It feels like a more global kind of voice adjustment that interacts with the blend.
Absolutely. That switch is critical. It gives you really broad tonal options by shaping the mid-range of the final blended signal. So you can choose flat mids, kind of neutral starting point,
Okay.
or scooped mids, which obviously emphasizes the lows and highs more, or boosted mids. Can we maybe put some context on mids here? Like when we say boost or scoop mids on a pedal like this, what sort of frequency range are we typically talking about?
Sure. Well, MXR doesn't publish the exact EQ curves, but in this kind of pedal for high gain, mids usually refers to somewhere in the, let's say, 500 hertz to maybe 2 kilohertz range.
Right, the guitar's core frequency.
Exactly. So the boosted setting is probably lifting the center of that range, maybe around 1K, 1.5K. That's often the sweet spot for harmonics, making sure your guitar really cuts through. And the scoop setting does the opposite, pulls that area down, emphasizes the chug and the sizzle at the frequency extremes. It's adaptive, you know.
So the blend knob controls the source of the character, which amp voice or combination, and the scoop switch shapes the presentation of that character, how it sits overall. That's a powerful combo.
Yeah, it is. And then if you look at the other knobs, gain, output volume, tone, those are more your standard utility controls. Gain sets the overall intensity, seems to affect the high gain channel more directly, while output is your master level, and tone is like a final top-end adjustment, brighter or darker.
Yeah.
But those are really for fine-tuning after you set the main character with the blend to the scoop.
Gotcha. Okay, let's shift gears slightly to the practical side. What does all this mean for you, the listener, putting together your pedal board? Who is this M251 really for, and why does this blending flexibility actually matter in, say, a live gig?
Well, it seems absolutely tailor-made for players who run single-channel amps.
Yeah.
You know, clean amps or maybe amps designed as pedal
They
platforms.
can try amps that don't have their own distortion channels.
Exactly. This pedal lets you get that sonic complexity, those two distinct amp voices you'd normally need a big multi-channel head for, but without needing a giant amp or like a complex digital modeler.
And it's super efficient. If you're playing, say, metal or modern rock, where you're constantly jumping between tight, scooped rhythm parts and then needing articulate, maybe mid-boosted leads.
You could potentially handle that entire shift just with this one pedal, maybe adjusting your guitar's volume a bit. It could replace two separate high-gain pedals, definitely. But there's a really important caveat, something the sources mentioned, the high-gain warning. Because the M251 is fundamentally a high-gain pedal, you've got to be a bit careful about where you put it and what you run it into.
Okay, tell us more about that. What's the risk if I try to run this into an amp that's already, like, really cranked and distorted?
Well, you could just end up with mush, a texture that's maybe overwhelmingly heavy, super compressed, maybe even kind of muddy or fizzy to the point where it just loses all definition. The circuits in the M251, they're designed to create most of the distortion themselves. If you feed that already distorted signal into an already saturated amp preamp, you're likely going to get some unpleasant intermodulation distortion, you know, just noise without clarity.
So the sweet spot where this pedal is really going to shine, as they say, is running it into a clean or maybe just a slightly pushed low-gain amp setting.
Absolutely. The sources are pretty clear on that. If you start with a clean amp platform, you have total control over the distortion character using the blend and scoop. But, and this is key, it requires some experimentation.
It's not plug-and-play perfection necessarily.
Right. You can't just set everything to noon and expect the magic hybrid tone to appear. The real strength of the M251 lies in tweaking that dynamic relationship between the two voices. You need to actually use that blend control, find the right percentage of scooped versus mid-punch for whatever part you're playing.
So it's less of a set and forget box and more of a dynamic tool, something you interact with based on the song or the section.
Precisely. The power is in that fine adjustment, that micro-blending.
Okay, so pulling it all together then.
Yeah.
The MXR M251 FOD drive, it seems like it genuinely does manage to pack two pretty critical high-gain amp sounds, that super scooped modern thing and the mid-focus crunch, into one small pedal. The real trick is that blend knob, that continuous analog mixing, backed up by the scoop switch, giving you that crucial EQ flexibility to make the blended sound work in a mix.
Yeah, and if we kind of zoom out for a second, connect this to the bigger picture, this pedal represents a pretty significant step in, like tone consolidation.
Yeah.
You're getting two very specific, sought-after sounds in one standard 9-volt box. That solves a huge pedal board real estate problem, especially for high-gain players. Which leads to, I think, an interesting question for you, the listener, to mull over.
Okay.
Does this level of versatility, this packing of two drive voices into one spot, does that free up space on your board so you can now explore totally different effects? Maybe weird reverbs, complex modulations, filters, or does the depth of control here with the blend and scoop actually make you want to focus even more intensely on just distortion and drive? Maybe dedicating that safe space and time to really mastering all the subtle hybrid tones this one pedal can offer.
That's a great point. How do you weigh that space saving versus the potential for deeper mastery of just one core sound? Definitely something to think about next time you're staring at that packed pedal board.